Welcome, history fanatics, to Mrs. Heron's video playlist, where you will get the best of the best in social studies.
We are working on Unit 3, Africa. Our goal for this unit is to analyze the impact of geography on history, culture, population, government, and the economy of Africa. This unit is split up into 3 chapters. Chapter 6, West and Central Africa, Chapter 7, Southern and Eastern Africa, and Chapter 8, North Africa. Only 5 countries make up the region of North Africa: Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Egypt. This region is extremely dry and rests along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. It is covered by the world's hottest desert, the Sahara, making it very dry and hot for most of the year. In fact, some areas go years without any rain at all, and sandstorms sweep over the region often. The people survive by living around the few water sources available, such as the oases that are scattered throughout North Africa. An oasis is a randomly placed section of water in the middle of a desert. At the tip of the region, the Atlas Mountains separate the desert from the sea. They help fertilize the land as rainwater rolls down the sides of the mountain. Egypt is not so lucky, as it is about 96% covered in desert and receives almost no rain at all. Thankfully, Egypt has fertile land around the Nile River. The Nile runs north from Lake Victoria and dumps into the Mediterranean Sea, forming a triangular-shaped delta. A delta is a flat strip of land that is formed from many years of a river dumping water over it. The river would flood Egypt every year until the people finally installed a dam to control the issue. The Nile River completely bisects Egypt into 2 segments. The easternmost tip of Egypt is a peninsula called the Sinai. It is separated from the rest of Africa by the Suez Canal. People do not typically live in desert areas because there is not enough water to sustain farming or to live off of it. Thus, most people in North Africa live along the coasts and near rivers or oases. This is becoming problematic, though, because the population is growing in this region, meaning more and more people are moving into the cities. Almost half of North Africa is Egyptian, and therefore Egypt has the largest population in the region, and most Egyptians live along the edges of the Nile River. Some Northwest Africans live in the mountains where they can farm, and some small populations live near an oasis in the Sahara. And the rest are nomadic, meaning they move from place to place without a permanent home. Nomads cannot sustain agriculture, so they are typically sheep or goat herders. One example are the Bedouins, who are Arab-speaking Muslims that travel with their animals throughout northern Africa. They live in tents made of animal hair and stop at designated grazing areas during certain seasons. North Africa is among the regions of the world that are going through urbanization, or the moving of people to more urban settings. People are living their lifestyles as herders, and farmers tend to pursue jobs in the cities to better their lives. In fact, almost half of North Africans live in the city. The largest city in Egypt is Cairo. It also happens to be home to 1 in 5 Egyptians. The cities are usually the source for the nation's economic, educational, and political growth, and for these reasons, they can seem very attractive to a poor farmer on, say, the countryside. In Northwest Africa, half of Moroccans, Tunisians, and Algerians, and 3/4 of Libyans live in the city. Typically, this means that the cities are overcrowded and they struggle to provide clean water or food to their residents. Recent human-environment interaction in North Africa has also had a few negative impacts on the region. One example is the building of the Aswan High Dam in 1964. We'll talk more about that in the next video. The Egyptian government built the dam across from the Nile so that Egyptian people could make better use of the water, improve farming, generate hydroelectricity, and reduce flooding. That all sounds good, right? Not so much. The flooding waters would fertilize the land around the Nile, which no longer would occur. To prevent their crops from drying up and withering away, farmers were forced to use artificial chemicals on their farmland for the soil to be fertile again. Eventually, these chemicals washed back into the Nile and eventually drained out into the Mediterranean Sea, which polluted both water sources. This killed the fish in the river and sea and destroyed the fishing industry. In recent years, however, the fish have increased back to the numbers that they were before the dam was built. No one really knows why. The Aswan High Dam also caused a lake to form behind the dam, Lake Nasser. This artificial lake has no running water and it lays stagnant in the African heat. Do you remember what conditions mosquitoes love? Hot and humid. This is definitely the case for Lake Nasser and has forced over 100,000 Egyptians to flee their homes to escape the malaria epidemic that the lake has caused. Lake Nasser also flooded many of the Egyptian monuments, causing the government to move them away from the dam. The temples in Abu Simbel are one example, where they were actually cut into 20-ton blocks and moved 213 feet up and 820 feet back from their original location. Libya has also made some changes to its natural water sources. The Libyan government made use of the large underground water channels in the Sahara Desert by building pipes to transport the water to the coastal cities where 4 out of 5 Libyans live. However, these were mainly positive changes compared to the Aswan High Dam, which were a mix. North Africa never had many forests or plants to begin with, so when goat and sheep herders began to allow their animals to feed off of the grass in this region, desertification set in. The animals would eat the grass all the way down to its roots, leaving nothing to hold the soil in place. This would dry up the land and leave behind only a dead, treeless desert. North Africa cannot afford more desert, but the effects of desertification can be reduced if herders stop overgrazing the land. The people can also build what are known as green walls, which are a wall of trees and plants that are planted along the edge of the desert to hold the soil in its place. This process was invented in 1970 in Algeria and is still used throughout the world today. Another major water source, the Nile River, provides North Africa one of its most important natural resources, water. However, because it runs north, Egypt is the last nation to receive the Nile's water, and if other nations use too much, Egypt could be left with a water shortage. Aside from water, several exports come from North Africa, such as cotton, olive, citrus fruits, and the most important resource, oil. Algeria and Libya have the largest oil reserves in the region. Now, because the oil and gas is typically found in the center of the Sahara, the North African governments have built pipelines that transport the resources to the coast to make exporting them easier. In 1869, another important moneymaker was installed in North Africa, the Suez Canal. The canal allowed ships to travel between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea easier. Otherwise, they would have to go around the entire continent of Africa. This means that businesses save money on transportation, which results in less expensive goods for us consumers. Yay! Oil is one of these goods, and the Suez Canal is used by over 3,000 oil tankers each year, which means the world economy relies on the goods that are transported across the Suez Canal. It is also a source of income for Egypt, as each ship that passes through it must pay a passage price. In 2008, these fees got more than $414 million in revenue for Egypt, down from the $3.6 billion 2 years earlier. In 2007, 710 million tons of cargo were carried across the canal by 20,384 ships. North Africa is a diverse land that has been impacted by European and Asian culture for thousands of years, where the people have shared ideas, goods, and religion.